Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit TRE.radio.
Our brains are incredibly adept at repair.
The me nobody sees.
We create our own realities.
A deep insight into mental health.
Good afternoon and welcome to The Me Nobody Sees. Hannah Murray here presenting the show this month until Selena gets back to us as soon as possible. Today we're going to be discussing the subject of addiction, and with me in the studio is Dr. Massimo Fontana, Michelle Mack and Yvonne Walker.
Hannah Murray, TRE in the afternoon.
Welcome to the programme, all of you. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, thanks all very much for being here. So let's start with you, Dr. Massimo, if we can, talking about the subject of addiction as a general subject. Obviously, there's so many different types of addiction, and are you used to seeing patients with very similar types of addiction? There's obviously some that are more prominent than others, should we say?
And honestly, I think it runs across the board in a lot of different areas. I mean, I one of the things that I do is I focus a lot on ADHD as an example, and what happens in the ADHD space as an example is until someone's actually been diagnosed with that, you'll find that there's a lot of potential addictions that actually can come up for that person that don't even realize they have ADD. And once that's actually dealt with, then they can actually start slowing down in using the potential addictions that they've been drawn to. But addiction can range from anything from watching TV obsessively to, of course, the common ones, which is more the alcohol, drug addiction, sex addiction is something else too.
It's interesting, isn't it, with modern technology, how many more issues they have brought. Addiction, but I think a lot of people, without thinking it's a big deal, are addicted to their mobile phones.
Absolutely, tech addiction now is actually a really huge thing, particularly among young people.
Definitely. We think that it's something that isn't an issue, but I think a lot of us are on our phones a lot more than we realise, and even being distracted. We've talked about this on different programmes before, whether you're at a concert, whether you're watching a film, whether you're out for dinner with your partner, doing things that you should be completely focused on. Some people are still scrolling through their phones while they're at a concert, which is crazy. We should be able to focus on one thing. All of you, please feel free to speak and involve yourselves whenever you want to. We're going to put the lines open as well. Anyone listening, if you have any comments on the subject of addiction from personal experience or just observations, please do get in touch.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95.
What a beautiful day. It's a wonderful life.
Massimo, are there particular traits that people tend to have that suffer with addiction issues?
To be honest, I would always refrain from looking at traits. I think it really depends in terms of the social conditions that people find themselves in. I think that each person needs to be taken on an individual basis, rather than going, okay, here's a set of traits that this person falls into.
I think that's the thing with addiction. Addiction is such a wide-ranging subject. I mean, and it's normally a combination of different causes, not just one specific cause. So it could be genetic, it could be psychological, it could be biological, it could be environmental. You've things got like trauma, peer pressure, the availability of whatever it is you're addicted to, all sorts of things. So it's quite difficult to be very super specific about addictions, because they are totally, a bit like grief as well, very individual to each individual.
Yeah. And also, I think for people who haven't had experience with addiction, either themselves or a family member, loved one, a friend, can sometimes find it difficult to understand. I think people can very flippantly say, oh, just stop drinking or just stop eating so much, as if it's your choice all the time.
My drug of choice was alcohol.
Yeah.
And there was no alcoholism in the family or anything. And I'm going back a lot. I mean, I've been in AA fellowship since the 80s, and when I got sober, there wasn't many drugs around, and there weren't that many women going to AA, and it was very hard. And my mother was horrified that a neighbour found out that I was in Alcoholics Anonymous, but luckily, and I'm very grateful it's not like that today.
Yeah.
You know, people come into AA, which I'm a member of, with all types of addictions, and there's a group for each addiction. If people wanted to, you know, go to meetings.
I think the stigma surrounding addiction has softened from what it was. I mean, Yvonne's saying, as a woman back then, she was one of the few. I mean, and I think that was very much a thing for women. You know, they would often could cover it more than with men. It was pretty much sort of alcohol and drugs were possibly more acceptable in men back then than they were in women. Not that they should be acceptable in anyone. However, I think that with the knowledge that we were all gaining on a daily, yearly basis, we're more aware of them, and we aren't so afraid to speak about them now.
Yeah, definitely. Yvonne, can I ask you what took you to go to that first AA meeting? Why did you think you needed to?
My rock bottom was, it wasn't the losing the house. It wasn't being paralysed for 2 years through alcohol-related illness, polyneuritis. And it wasn't for anything other than my head. My head was gone, you know, and I was just a mess. I thought that once I started walking again, I'd be okay, or, you know, and for me, this is family illness. And my family was suffering terribly. Yeah. You know, I had 2 young children that used to ask me not to drink, but you know, I didn't think anything wrong. I drank because, you know, my ex-husband was this, and I drank because I'd had a serious illness. Because in those days, going back in the 80s, they didn't look at what caused the illnesses. You know, my illness was caused by too much drink. Polyneuritis is, as I'm sure the doctor will agree with me, is caused through drink or drugs or that type of thing. Yeah. You know, so when I came into AA, I was ready, and I came in for me. You know, I had to come in for me, not what anybody else.
That's such an interesting point, because I think readiness is a key ingredient in that, and I think, you know, a lot of people will try and look at, let's say, for instance, addiction treatments as there's a one fit for everybody. But I think one of the most important parts is to try and find the right thing that fits for the individual person.
Yes.
And if you do have a support system behind you that can, you know, really just...
Yeah.
Also, I think that, I mean, I'm sure you'll back me up, both of you, with addiction and with addicts, you can't help an addict until they're ready to help themselves.
Absolutely.
And they have to hit their rock bottom before they are either willing or prepared to maybe take that first step. And it doesn't matter how much good you want to think you're trying to do, it has to come from them. They have to want to do it, or it won't work generally.
No. Yeah, I'm sure everybody's had experience with a family member, whether it's drinking or smoking or gambling or all kinds of different things, with people saying to that person, you need to stop smoking, it's not good for your health, or these kind of things, and that person is quite happy to carry on smoking. You know, they know it's not good for them, but they don't want to stop a lot of the time, or don't feel the need to stop, or it has to be something that comes within. Absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
And your experience of AA obviously has been a really positive one.
Yes, it has. I've not had a drink since my first meeting.
Wow, congratulations.
Back in England. And that is
huge round of applause.
Yes,
and that is through AA and the people in it. You know, it was hard. I'm not saying it's an easy ride, but it was a lot easier than out there pretending I'm not an alcoholic. Being in here, being in AA.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you think that the community element is one of the most helpful parts of that process?
Oh yes, definitely. I got sober in the East End of London, and there was a lot of meetings, and I used to be taken backwards and forwards to meetings, and as I said, I wanted it. And just meeting after meeting, and I didn't speak at a meeting for 2 years. Years, because I was such a wreck, so nervous, but I just kept going, and gradually I got better. It got better when I got better. I couldn't have got sober, and there was no treatment centres around. I mean, there was still the Priory, but that was thousands.
Yeah.
It still is.
Yes.
Yeah. And basically, I just had to go to meetings. There wasn't, and the doctors didn't really know anything about alcoholism then, not as much as they do now. It was never publicised, and my father got me the telephone number of Alcoholics Anonymous out the phone book because there was no internet or whatever, and I phoned and begged for help. And help came.
I think you have to be so brave. It takes such courage, from my point of view, to be able to take that first step and make that call.
It's stepping out of the isolation. I think, and that's what I find is probably the bigger killer out of everything. It's if you remain in that state of isolation.
And the community thing is a really good point. A lot of people I've spoken to who have been through AA say that the realisation that you're not alone,
that is right,
that other people are going through exactly the same or sometimes worse than what you've been going through is a real light bulb moment for a lot of people.
I couldn't have come to Spain if there was an AA in Spain.
Okay.
Because my support network, So when I came to Spain, I used to get 2 buses to Fuengirola of a day, 3 times a week, and 2 buses back just to go to a meeting.
Gosh.
And that, it gave me a life.
Yeah.
It did. Gave me a life in Spain.
And obviously everybody's different, but for you, it's something you've been sober for decades now, which is amazing. But going to the meetings regularly is still something you want to do.
Yes.
And is that for a social thing, or is that to keep reminding yourself of the reasons why you're not drinking?
I have to keep reminding myself.
Okay.
I have to keep,
Even after this long, Yvonne?
Even after this long, I can easily fall back into... See, it wasn't just picking up the drink, it was the whole... my mentality.
That's the behavioural processes behind that too.
And I have to keep reminding myself just what it was like.
If you don't mind, Hannah, I've got a question. How did you feel when your father gave you the number, and are you grateful that it was him that gave you the number?
I was relieved that they accepted that I was an alcoholic and that, I just wasn't a horrible person.
Yeah.
Well.
So emotional.
Yep.
Yeah, a big moment. And how did they feel, your father, your family, when you went through the process?
Yeah, they was overjoyed. But I can still remember, when I first started going to meetings, I had people pick me up and take me to meetings. And I could see the look on their face when I came back from a meeting and walked through that door, because I lived with them because I'd given my house away, and that's a drunk-a-log. And I can still see the look on their face when I walked back from a meeting, the relief that I'd come home, because I was always going off missing. So because for me it's a family illness. Everyone was affected by my drinking.
But I don't think it's just the alcoholism. I think all addictions have a massive impact on those around them, whether it be drugs, alcohol, gambling,
eating
disorders come into all of that as well.
Sex,
love addiction as well.
Yeah.
Here's your man for that.
And as I said, the loved ones, the family members, even though they love love and care for you so much, it must be very difficult for them to understand completely what you're going through. As I say, people's reactions can often be, just stop. Why do you keep doing this to yourself? They don't understand why people with addiction keep making the same choices or keep making the same mistakes. To them, it's like, well, just stop doing it. But what it's obviously something that's going on in the brain. It's not about just making bad choices, is it?
No. I mean, it's feeding dopamine receptors. That's one of the things. But it's the problem is that when you've conditioned yourself so much that it becomes not only habitual, but there's a compulsion to do it all the time. So what's really important is looking at the behavioral aspect plus the thinking. And if you have a support system around you that, I'd like to say, has done enough research into it, that is also really, really helpful.
Yeah. I had an interview earlier this week with a mother and son who are both psychotherapists who had written a book called Porn Bomb, which was all about porn addiction and how they'd seen a massive rise in young men, particularly coming into their clinics. And again, I asked them, how do people know whether they're just consuming porn and just thinking, well, it's fine, it's not having a bad influence on my life, and actually being addicted? And they were saying, if you're doing it 3 times a day, or you're not going to social events and choosing to stay home and watch porn instead of going to the gym, or making better lifestyle choices, that's when it's, as you say, really impacting your life.
It's also the loss of control in the let's call it the drug of choice. The moment you get that feeling of I have no control over this is taking charge of everything, you're in.
Yeah. And a crutch as well, that's the other thing. When people associate with whether it's having a cigarette, having a drink, having a line of cocaine, or...
I think that's the way most people fall into addiction, honestly, is they start using just as a casual user, and either through a series of circumstances, like a mixture of what we've talked about in environmental, psychological, whatever. And some people do have a genetic predisposition to an addictive personality. And if you get high off of the dopamine rewards you're getting from whatever you're doing, it's very difficult to stop.
It's like if you take cocaine as an example, right? A lot of people use cocaine to come out of themselves. They present a very different version of themselves with that drug of choice. So they're doing that consistently. Now all of a sudden they see themselves in that light, and when they go back to, let's say, for instance, a baseline of normality, they don't really like who that person is.
Yeah.
So of course it's easy access to something like that. And it's reinforced by how everyone relates to them as well. So you're getting in a sense positive feedback from everyone around you too.
Yeah. What I was going to say was that when people are using any of those things, because I think everybody would have experienced coming home from a stressful day at work and saying, oh, I need a cigarette, or oh, I need a glass of wine, or that kind of thing, using it as some kind of, if I have this, I will feel better. And not that there's anything wrong with doing that necessarily, but when that becomes a habit, feeling like you need that glass of wine in order to feel okay after your stressful day, it's the need as opposed to I fancy a glass of wine after the it can be small.
Yes, but it compounds. But the word I would probably associate to that is self-regulation. Here you're talking about an issue with self-regulation. What's actually going on underneath? Do I need to use this to regulate myself? And the second someone starts using that to balance out the emotional levels or the emotional discomfort.
Yeah.
Mine was for confidence. Definitely drunk for confidence.
Okay.
And I think that's the other thing with alcohol, possibly above all other addictions, is it's so socially acceptable.
Yeah.
Everybody goes to the pub for a drink. Everybody goes out and can have a glass of wine. So it's much more easily hidden. It creeps up on people much more. And I don't think people are educated enough to the dangers of actually how dangerous alcohol is and alcohol addiction is.
Correct.
And from as long as I remember growing up, people used to ban the word about alcoholic as a bit of a joke.
Yeah.
If people like to drink, oh, I'm an alcoholic, they'd say it as if it was a fun term because you like to drink, and without understanding the seriousness of being an alcoholic.
But I would imagine over your period of time through AA and meeting others, not all alcoholics are what we see or as the classic alcoholic, the that somebody gets up, has a glass of vodka in the morning, is falling around, stumbling drunks. There are a lot of people who are very high functioning addicts across the board, and I've seen them, and I think they're harder to get through to, actually.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because if they're keeping down a job and everything else, then they think, well, exactly what you say, I'm not getting up in the morning reaching for a glass of vodka, so I'm fine. Yeah. People always know someone that drinks more than they do, and they'll justify their drinking by saying, well, I've got a friend who drinks way more than I do, and therefore that makes them feel better about their own drinking.
When I first started going to AA, there was a lot of ladies there that only had a glass of wine in the evening.
Really?
And we used to call them, and we used to call them lace curtain drinkers. And their problem was as bad as us, that drunk a lot. I mean, I drank a lot. My drinking choice was Special Brew. And if anyone's knows about Special Brew, it's
quite powerful stuff.
So when you say theirs was just as bad, because
mentally,
I was going to say, even though they're drinking a lot less, they couldn't not have that glass of wine a night.
It is mental. It is a mental condition. I'm sure you'll agree with me.
Indeed, but do you feel that the usage of whatever the drug of choice is fills a space that is, how do I put this, is lacking meaning?
It does for a while.
Yeah.
It does for a while. And then you just have to keep having more and more.
Yeah.
And it's just a vicious circle. You start off and it's okay. And it does give meaning. But, the more you drink, the more you want. And the higher it makes you feel, the higher you want to go. Yeah. If you're addicted to alcohol, it's a very, very hard drink to come off, But it can be done.
Did you experience bad hangovers?
No, because I used to top up all the time. I didn't have a hangover.
Yeah.
I wasn't a lace curtain drinker. I drank morning, noon and night.
Yeah.
I woke up and my hand would go under the bed for the can of Special Brew. People who know me since I got sober can't imagine it, but
not in a million years knowing you as I do now.
Yeah.
And presumably one of the big things that they say once you are stopping alcohol or trying to stop drinking alcohol, as an example, the change in lifestyle.
Oh yes.
You can't necessarily go out with the same group of friends if they're all knocking back loads to drink. You need to start changing your life really and your social gatherings.
And that's the problem nowadays with younger people coming into AA, because there's a lot of young people coming in their lifestyle has to change. They can't go down. Well, they're advised not to go down the pool or to do certain things, and they don't want to do that. So therefore, it's in and out, in and out. You have to change everything.
I find that really. Pat was telling me about the rise in more and more young people coming to AA, which is really interesting because, again, we might think that it's something that an older person would do, having drunk a lot of their life, but younger people are realising that they have a problem and need to stop, which is fascinating.
It's usually associated with more binge drinking styles.
Yes.
Definitely, and having younger people in my remit and around, they don't. The youth today actually don't want to be drinking like we did. It's quite staggering, really, and it is amazing how many of them are foregoing stuff like that. And also I think there's been a huge rise, and it's much more acceptable in things like sober socials, which are really important for young people and non-young people. And I know that we now have them here in Spain, so shout out to sober socials. And I think those sort of things are allowing people the freedom to go out, enjoy themselves, and not feel they've got to drink. I think there's a lot of peer pressure on younger people. And I know both my daughters who live permanently here but have spent time living in the UK found the drinking culture for young people in the UK quite crazy and something they didn't experience here, funnily enough. So it's quite an interesting. I think it very much depends on where you are as well, and the social mix.
And the huge rise in wellness, not just for older people, but for younger people. So many young people would rather spend money going to a really fancy gym than going to a fancy restaurant and drinking nice wine.
But this is also interesting because, if you're going to the extreme of that too, body dysmorphia is also something else that comes into the picture that becomes an addiction itself. I think we have to try and tune into our barometer and find out exactly, where does that land. It's calibrating that quite well.
And how do you begin to start when you have a patient that's suffering with addiction? Where do you need to go with them?
I think the first starting point is taking a history. It's Yvonne, like you were saying, it's looking at all the potential influences that are, influencing mental side, the behavioral side, and then just teasing these things out so that there's more consciousness and awareness to how the person is behaving in all these contexts.
And are people generally coming to you because they want and feel like they need help, or often people coming to you because their mum's making them or their husband's making them? Or
well, I've had both. In terms of when you have, let's say, for instance, an intervention where parents or partners are presenting the client per se, it is a little bit more tricky. And like you were saying, Michelle, is that they have to want to be there. So I can be as brutally honest with them and blunt with them and say exactly what I think and feel and what I see, but it's really down to them if they want to do something about it. But in respect of also the sexology side, there's a lot of sex addiction that comes to me.
Is that people knowing that they have an issue and coming to you generally?
Yeah. And it plays out a lot in the couples work that I do, because maybe one of the partners has found out that this is something that's happened behind the scenes, and then that gets flagged, and then the person comes to me and we work through that.
And I'm sure pornography has a lot to do with it. One of the things that came up in the interview a couple of days ago was that kids are getting younger and younger at the age that they're being exposed to pornography. And the psychotherapist was saying that people were getting into their first kind of serious relationship at maybe 18, 20, 25, whatever kind of age. And thinking that that's what sex is supposed to be like. What they'd seen in porn was what you're supposed to do, and getting themselves into all kinds of problems with the girls not wanting to do that kind of thing, and them being a bit confused. And I mean, it can cause all kinds of kinds of complications.
And the age is getting younger and younger and younger. Before, I guess my time, I'm 43, 18 was the point where we would want to try and sort of engage sexually. You try everything under the sun, but you didn't really get there. Whereas now, there is a lot of pressure to perform at a very, very young age.
And it's weird to think that kids are watching pornography when they haven't kissed someone and haven't been in a relationship. They don't understand what they're watching, really.
The responsibility that comes with it.
Yeah, exactly. Very confusing for everybody. We better take a break.
Hannah Murray on TRE in the afternoon.
Good afternoon. You're listening to The Me Nobody Sees. We're discussing the subject of addiction today. With me in the studio is Michelle Mack, Yvonne Walker and Dr. Massimo Fontana. If you're listening at home and you'd like to get involved, if you have any comments on the subject of addiction, here's how you do it.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95.
What a beautiful day, it's a wonderful life.
Something we haven't really touched on yet is the subject of being addicted to prescription drugs. I've watched quite a few documentaries and done various interviews over the years about the subject of OxyContin, a big drug particularly in America, but also still prescribed here in Europe. And the idea of somebody being in severe pain and desperate for anything to get rid of this pain, and being given this drug by their doctor, and it works, it gets rid of the pain, but then you need to keep taking more and more in order for the pain to go.
It's the most horrific drug drug I've ever taken.
It's horrendous.
When I was in America, I got hospitalised. I'm going back about 3 or 4 years ago. I had a rupture in my shoulder, and I spent 3 or 4 days back in and out the air, and they literally just stick you straight on it. I was so over-medicated by the time I got back here. I was so ill from the amount of medication that I couldn't even think straight. And I knew what was happening to me with regard to that, because it wasn't the first time in my life, unfortunately, that I had been very severely hooked on prescription medication. So prescription medication has got just as many issues as non-prescription medication, and drugs that are recreational.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think probably it's harder because they're given to you by a medical professional.
Exactly. So you don't. It's not the same as shooting up in an alleyway, is it? It really isn't. You think, well, I'm in pain, and this makes me feel better.
Literally,
and it's come from my doctor.
After about 1, 2, 3, about a month, I was off my face. And it took me so long to clear it out my system and get over it. But yeah, it made me realise why they have such a huge problem in the States with it, and obviously fentanyl and others like that.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a massive issue.
I can't believe they still prescribe it with all the evidence that have come out and all the documentaries about the Sackler family. And I mean, I just find it absolutely shocking. All the people who have died and the families left behind who have been trying to get compensation for years. And I can't believe it's still a legal drug prescribed by doctors.
Look, I don't even think that it has to go to such an extreme in that kind of drug. It can be as simple as paracetamol. Ibuprofen, readily available, cocodamol.
Yeah.
You know, these over-the-counter tablets are also things that people can get hooked on very, very quickly.
When I was in hospital with the problems with my legs, they started me on steroids. And to keep the legs going, even though I wasn't moving. And when I came out of hospital, it took me a long time to get, weaned off them. I mean, they're given to anybody now, aren't they? They're quite available. But I had a terrible job coming off them.
Yeah. Don't they need to look into, when people are in hospital and need pain medication, aren't they supposed to find out if that person is an addict or has had a history with addiction, and that should make a difference into the medication they're being prescribed?
It should be a protocol.
It should be. Yeah.
It should be a protocol, but it isn't always.
Yeah.
And also, it depends on what state somebody gets taken into hospital in, and whether they are compass mentis enough to have that conversation.
And if they're honest.
Yes, that's the other thing.
That's another thing with addiction.
Is honesty.
Is honesty. We're great at lying. We are, us alcoholics, addicts, are great at lying.
Yeah.
And
they're very good at masking, covering up, hiding, all of the things that you associate with those things, and they become past masters at it.
And we believe it. Half the time we do believe it.
You mentioned in the break, Yvonne, that marijuana, cannabis, can be quite a big issue for young people.
It is on this coast, yes. Yeah. They're smoking it in schools, and it's very hard. That's hard to come off of, isn't it?
I would say it's an entry drug.
Yeah.
It's an entry drug to a lot of other things.
Yeah.
And I think we were speaking before about peer pressure. It's something that is increasing. I've got young nephews, and I work with some young clients as well, 14 years old, really being pushed into using that accessibility. It wasn't like that when we were growing up. No. Now it's very readily available.
I think there's an accessibility issue, obviously. In the UK, certain things aren't, everything's accessible if you really want it wherever you live. However, in the UK, there are laws that are more stringent, and certain things aren't as accessible maybe as they are along this coast. And certain things are more prevalent along this coast particularly. But I wouldn't say, I mean, yes, I think marijuana is a gateway drug. So is alcohol.
I would say alcohol
I was going to
first.
say the two of them, for me as a parent, I would think run concurrently here. And I know which one no, I couldn't really say that. But I think it's just to be aware that it's available to everybody, and kids are curious. Let's be frank.
It's the inevitable.
If their friend's doing it, they want to try it, and it's just the luck of the draw. Whether you've got a child that's naturally drawn to those things and maybe is a slightly more addictive personality and likes the sensation, or a child that isn't. But it's all, for me as a parent, it's all about the education.
100%.
Am I right in saying that cannabis isn't, I don't want to say isn't at all addictive, but isn't anywhere near as addictive as alcohol and drugs?
I think it comes down to the individual, but it's also how you're compounding the behavior. Yeah. How often are you using it? What's your association with it? What's the emotional connection you have with it? The second that connection is made and it's like, oh wow, this relieves so much of my emotional pain, it's a go-to.
Yeah, because a lot of people justify marijuana use by saying that there aren't anywhere near as many deaths associated with smoking marijuana compared to alcohol. Also, in terms of like road accidents because people drinking compared to smoking marijuana, all the different reasons why people might end up in a hospital due to drinking alcohol are way more than
Let's be honest, no one's going to go out and start a riot when they're stoned.
Exactly, that's enough. Yeah. Yes.
So totally. There is that side to it, obviously, but it still has its downsides, its negatives.
Yeah.
It can be very depressive. It can cause a great deal of anxiety in young people. So each drug, as we say, and we haven't even touched on food.
Sugar.
No. Sugar is the most addictive of everything.
And most readily available.
And the most readily available.
And it's advertised. We're led to believe that we want and need it in our lives from a young age. Cartoon characters are advertising cereals covered in sugar, chocolate bars. We grow up seeing all these pretty colours and cute little characters associated with crap, basically.
Pretty much.
And that's the case throughout our lives. So, I mean, being addicted to sugar is I think a lot of people have the issue without thinking they have the issue because it's just their life.
An amazing test is just have a look at your life and see the things that you're using. Cut it back by half and see the response.
And if you have sugar in coffee or tea, stop it.
No,
that's a good thing to stop.
No.
Yes, I stopped that years ago. It doesn't take long to get used to it.
It doesn't. I mean, I am one of those people who do like my coffee with the sugar in it, but I have a substitute, a natural substitute, because I know how bad the sugar is for me. But it is one of those things. I think it's one of the hardest addictions to break, actually.
And coffee.
Oh, you're never going to get me give that up, Yvonne. Never.
I couldn't give up coffee.
But
I've tried.
You're looking at stimulants, and something that's not often spoken about is moms who use their kids' ADHD medication.
Wow,
that's something else as well. It's if you don't have ADHD, you're technically using an amphetamine. So you have this incredible stimulant that's getting you through the day, helping you deal with your kids. Unless you have anxiety issues, that will probably provoke the anxiety as well. Yeah. There's so many of these things that are masked.
I'm just sat here with my jaw on the floor about any parent that would take their kids' ADHD medication.
Yeah. Ritalin is
a real problem with it.
Ritalin and Adderall are two of the ones that
parents rather like. Yeah. Oh, well, there you go.
Gosh, we better take another break.
Let's have a nice cup of TRE in the afternoon with Hannah Murray.
Good afternoon. You're listening to The Me Nobody Sees. With me in the studio today is Michelle Mack, Yvonne Walker and Dr. Massimo Fontana. Today we're discussing addiction. One thing I wanted to mention is eating disorders. You know, a lot of the addictions we've been talking about is the idea of consuming more, having more of something, not being able to stop doing something. Whereas eating disorders, sometimes it can be about not eating and not doing something, which is really interesting.
It's once again, it's the obsessive nature that goes into these. You know, it's like you could have forgive the phrase, the gym bunny who goes to the gym all the time because they're getting all the endorphins from something like that. But then the second it becomes an obsession, you're also putting yourself at a lot of risk. It's a bodybuilder, as an example, eating 8,000 calories a day. You know, that's a lifestyle. And to stop that all of a sudden, and then there's potentially body dysmorphic issues that come in. It's a bit more of a convoluted space, I would say, the eating disorder side.
I think as well with food, anything to do with food addiction, it's a really hard one, I think. It's not the same as drugs or alcohol. It's not looked at in the same way. The treatments are very different. And again, often the causes, the compounding causes for that are quite different to alcohol and drugs.
And the comorbidity. Yeah, comorbidity.
I can't say it either today.
Well done, you two. Yeah, it's true, because a lot of youngsters can suffer with eating disorders when they wouldn't necessarily be into drugs and things like that. But it might be to do with issues at home, and you know, maybe the
often
parents
it's
are arguing.
Often it's comfort eating, and like anything that you get a pleasure from, it's the endorphin stimulant, isn't it? It's the dopamine reward system in the brain, and you're giving it something, it likes it, so you just keep giving it because it makes you feel better. And often people who have got mental health issues, so they're co-occurring mental health issues, are more predisposed to addictions.
Yeah.
One thing I would always ask anyone that I work with: how do you self-soothe? It's something that I think everybody needs to reflect on, because if you have access to understanding how you soothe yourself in a deep, dark, emotional place, you'll have an answer to a lot of things there.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
That's something I've never thought of.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
A new one for your board.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting one.
It's a really good question, actually,
Definitely.
because it really makes you stop and think.
Yeah.
And I think it's a top for anybody that's listening today that may feel that they have an addiction or may not want to admit it. That is the question to ask yourself to take away from today's programme.
Definitely. I have had conversations with friends. I find this quite fascinating, not from an addiction point of view, but just more as a go-to how you feel to do with food. If you're stressed, if you're grieving, if there's things that are going on in your life that you're struggling to cope with, I have friends who openly say, "Oh, I can't eat. If I'm stressed, I can't eat." And it's not that they have an eating disorder. It's just it goes with, "Oh no, I've got a lot going on. I don't want to eat in that situation." And then other friends who prefer to eat if they're a bit bored or if they're a bit stressed, and I'll just have something to eat that sort of makes me feel a little bit better. And I find that really interesting.
But both are in respect of anxiety.
Yeah.
So I always find addictions quite interesting from a point of view that it's, you know, is it a symptom of something else, or is it the thing that we're actually wanting? For me, it's more of a symptom of something else that's underlying.
Yeah.
You said yours was about not having confidence. And I think a lot of people find they become addicted because of those sort of things, socially not confident or unaware of various different things, and there's usually an underlying reason behind it.
And that can start quite simply in not being an alcoholic necessarily, but just the idea with a group of friends. If you're going out dancing, I'm sure people have either said or heard friends say, "Oh no, I need to have a drink if we're going to dance." Just the idea of having that extra confidence, that extra boost, and again that can seem quite normal in the early years. You know, you want to have a drink because we're going out dancing, but then it's whether it goes further than that.
I used to drink. I was married to a man that was older than me, and we had that sort of social life. He was a metal merchant in the East End of London, and we used to mix with quite a lot of people, and they was all older. So I had to have a drink before I even went out.
Yeah.
Quite a few drinks.
Was that for Dutch courage?
Yes, yes. And at that time, I didn't think there was anything wrong with that, because my addiction hadn't shown itself.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There'll be a lot of people that do that all the time, and aren't necessarily addicted.
Something that we probably need a whole segment on is if you're looking at, let's say, for instance, more of the spiritual movement. People are also addicted to process. So it's finding amazing communities that really, get you to feel very elevated, if it's ecstatic dance or something like that. And then the second they leave, they go back to a reality that's actually not as high as that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We better take the last break.
TRE in the afternoon.
Good afternoon. You have been listening to the Me Nobody Sees with Michelle Mack, Yvonne Walker and Dr. Massimo Fontana. Just want to give out some contact details. We've been talking about addiction, so we want to give out some information. So if you're listening at home and you want to get in touch with any of these organisations, then please do. Dr. Massimo, do you want to give out your details?
Yeah, just the simplest with me is on any social media, it's Dr. Massimo Fontana, or my website is massimo.love.
Massimo.love. Perfect. And Yvonne, you've got the contact details for AA on the post?
Yes. The telephone number is 600-379-110, and that's the helpline, and aacostadelsol.com.
Perfect. aacostadelsol.com.
And that gives all the information about AA on the coast, the meetings where they are, etc.
Fantastic. And the important thing is with AA is obviously finding the meeting near you.
That's
because
right.
They are all over Spain.
Yes,
so that phone number, is that for Costa del Sol as well?
They'll direct you.
Great.
Yeah.
Great, fantastic. Michelle, you've got some numbers there
I do. I'm the information guru. So there's a national helpline for Andalusia for drugs, alcohol and all addictions, which is at 900-845-040. You can also look up a very good a helpline as well called Proyecto Hombre. They're based in Malaga, but they have them all over the place. Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous both have websites for Spain and are at info@Narcóticos Anónimos ES and info@Alcohólicasanónimos.org. There's also, for people who can't speak Spanish, a European Alcoholics Anonymous helpline number, which is +44 800 917 7650, and that is across the EU. Last but not least, addictalia.es offer information with professionals to help and detox centres across the whole of Spain, and Samaritans in Spain who are absolutely incredible, as we all know. 900-525-100.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much.
Numbers there. You do not have to suffer.
Yes.
You don't.
Absolutely not.
Definitely. Good note to end it on, Yvonne. Thank you all very much for coming in today.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this programme, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit tre.radio.